Senator Ted Cruz just issued moments ago this challenge to Donald Trump.
I'm going to propose a venue, Western Iowa Tech, Saturday night in Sioux City. We already have it reserved. 8 o'clock Saturday night, a 2-hour one-on-one debate. Now, if gentle Donald cannot handle Megyn Kelly, how about for a moderator instead, Mark Levin? Or if he doesn't like Mark Levin, how about Sean Hannity? And if he doesn't like Sean Hannity, how about Rush Limbaugh?
All right, that's not all. Moments ago, a pro-Cruz super PAC, Keep the Promise, tweeted, quote, Donald Trump, debate Ted Cruz one-on-one in Iowa. Before the caucuses, we will donate $1.5 million to veterans charities. Hashtag Iowa Caucus, hashtag Great Deal. Here with reaction, 2016 Republican presidential candidate, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. This is now taking on a life of its own.
Yeah.
All right, so Donald Trump apparently is not showing up tomorrow.
It is an amazing thing for a candidate who wants to compete in Iowa to say to the men and women of Iowa that he doesn't respect their views enough to show up at the debate. Look, I think anyone that wants to win the Iowa caucuses owes it to the men and women of this state to show the humility, to subject yourself to the voters, to answer questions. And that is certainly what I am working to do. I think it's stunning Donald has refused to do it. But listen, if your colleague Megyn is so scary for him, then I've suggested you could moderate, Mark could moderate, Rush could moderate.
I'll be glad to do this. I'll be gladly do that.
You would be fantastic. And we've got a venue at Western Iowa Tech. It's already reserved. I've told Donald he can invite half the people. We'll invite half the people. And you know what? If you're too scary, then we've said, fine, we'll do no moderator and just have the men and women of Iowa ask questions. That's what we owe the voters.
All right, you laid this group, because this is not you, this group laid out parameters that Mr. Trump would have to agree to in order to secure the $1.5 million for America's vets. The debate must take place before this coming Sunday in Iowa. The debate is just between the two of you. The candidate, you guys get to pick the moderators between yourselves, and the debate is only 1 hour long. And $1.5 million goes to military charities.
So that's what their press release said. And you know, I got to say, Donald, when he backed out of the debate, he said he was doing it because he was very concerned about veterans. Listen, we all care about the incredible brave men and women who served our country. This is an opportunity for $1.5 million, apparently, to go to veterans charities if simply Donald will respect the men and women of Iowa and answer their questions rather than refusing to stand before them.
How big a venue is this? How many people are you talking about?
It seats about 800 people.
Okay.
So he could invite about 400. We'll invite about 400.
Maybe we'll get a bigger venue.
Look, if we could certainly
get an arena.
We could take the questions from the people. I mean, that's really what's important. It is that, you know, on Monday, we're going to complete what's called the full Grassley, which means that I will have traveled and done an event in all 99 counties in Iowa, stood in front of the voters, and looked them in the eyes. And it's the reason why this presidential primary begins in Iowa and New Hampshire, because, look, if we began in a big state, if we began in California or New York or Texas, it would all be slick Hollywood TV ads. Here in Iowa, you know, there's an old joke, are you voting for so-and-so for president? No, I couldn't possibly. I've only met him 5 times.
Yeah, that's what it's like here. All right, what does this really tell you? I tend to not think he's afraid of Megyn Kelly. What do you think it is? Why do you think he doesn't want to do this?
But listen, I don't think he's afraid of Megyn, actually, and I don't think he's afraid of me. I think he's afraid of the voters. I think he is afraid of the men and women of Iowa because he is campaigning, telling people he's a conservative. But his record is directly contrary to what he's saying. So for example, on amnesty, he has made a big thing campaigning on illegal immigration. But when I was leading the fight, along with Jeff Sessions and Steve King, against Marco Rubio's amnesty bill, Donald Trump was publicly supporting amnesty. He was tweeting in support of Rubio's amnesty bill. He was criticizing Mitt Romney for being too tough on illegal immigration.
When he was talking about self-deportation.
And Donald's proposal today as a presidential candidate is that he still supports amnesty. What he says is we should deport the people, But then he says once we deport those here illegally, they should come back in as citizens. As you know, that's called touchback. It's something establishment Republicans have pushed for a long time. You fly them home, they touch the ground briefly, and then they come back as citizens. I think that's wrong. And so many of Donald's supporters don't know that he supports amnesty right now. Many of them don't know that he agrees with Hillary Clinton on health care.
Let me talk about the state of the campaign for you.
Yeah.
It's neck and neck here. I mean, the polls have been insane. What I find fascinating, if you go back to 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, the polls in Iowa historically have been awfully wrong for both Democrats and Republicans. Why do you think that is? And what does that tell you about this cycle?
Well, I think a lot of the pollsters are very bad at predicting who's going to turn out. The dynamic we're seeing playing out is really remarkable. The Washington establishment is abandoning Marco Rubio in droves. I think they've decided Marco can't win. And they're rushing to support Donald Trump. And that is and they've said the reason for that is that they can work with Donald. You know, Bob Dole and Trent Lott both said, Donald will cut a deal, we can work with him. And in fact, Donald, when he was laying out why he thinks people should vote for him, he said, you know, Ted's problem is he won't go along to get along. He won't cut deals with the Democrats. Now, I got to say, as I've campaigned all over the country, I haven't met a single Republican who says the problem with Republican leadership in Washington is that they need to cut more deals with the Democrats. People are frustrated with the betrayal. And what we're seeing on the flip side is conservatives are uniting behind our campaign. Dr. James Dobson is supporting our campaign. Congressman Steve King, the strongest conservative in Iowa, is supporting our campaign. Bob Vanderplots is supporting our campaign. Just yesterday, Tony Perkins, the leader of the Family Research Council, is supporting our campaign. Rick Perry is supporting our campaign. And it is extraordinary to see conservatives uniting. This is providing a clear choice to the men and women of Iowa.
What happens if you win Iowa and you're showing the potential you could? Tell us how you see the rest of the campaign unfolding.
Well, listen, I am very, very encouraged. Iowa's neck and neck. I hope we win. I believe we can win. It depends on turnout. It depends on conservatives coming out 117 hours from now, Monday night at 7 p.m.
You got it down to the minute, too.
Oh, we are.
In a second.
Every minute.
Yeah.
This is all about turnout. Look, what I am asking folks to do is show up and caucus for us on Monday and to bring others. Bring your mom, bring your son, bring your next-door neighbor. And I don't believe the Iowa caucuses will be won from a TV studio in Manhattan or from New York or from D.C. It's going to be won on the ground here in Iowa, neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend, Iowan to Iowan. And our strength is a grassroots army. Now, regardless of what happens here in Iowa, I believe we can win. I hope we win. But regardless, we're right now very strong in New Hampshire. We're very strong in South Carolina. And we are incredibly strong across the Super Tuesday states, the so-called SEC primary.
Let me talk about, let's say you become the president.
Yeah.
And you know what? I would agree with you. And it's interesting, an establishment person called me one day. Did you hear that? He's comparing Republicans to drug dealers and the cartels. So apparently that struck a nerve with some people. But you stood up, you filibustered, and you got called a wacko bird.
Yeah.
Now, from what I remember, every other congressman and senator that's a Republican, and they promised to repeal and replace Obamacare. So, you know, because some people say, well, Ted Cruz, he may not get along with these people.
Right.
What does that mean if you are in that office and they are on the other side at Capitol Hill?
Listen, if you are going along and getting along in Washington, you're doing something wrong. You know, what I've done from the first day I arrived in the Senate has been two things. Tell the truth and do what I said I would do. And it says something about Washington, D.C., that those are considered radical and extreme acts. That when I said I would fight with every breath in my body against Obamacare, I when I said I would fight against the debt that's bankrupting our kids and grandkids, and I would stand up against the debt ceiling, the Republican establishment was shocked. I mean, they basically say, no. That's what you say to the voters back home. You don't actually do it.
They actually say that to you?
Just about. It is very, very close.
That's chilling.
It is, you know, as you know, I wrote last year a book called A Time for Truth. And the very first chapter is entitled Mendacity, and I describe the fight over the debt ceiling. I describe how Republican leadership asked every Republican to consent to lowering the threshold to making it easier for Harry Reid to jack up the debt ceiling. And we were told if you do that, it will happen, And we can vote no, and we can go tell our constituents we oppose the thing we just consented to allow happen.
There was a poll, I think it was a Fox poll, 60-some-odd% of Republicans felt betrayed by Washington Republicans.
Yes.
So there's obviously...
And I'm in that 60%.
In many percent, I am too.
Yeah.
Although I'm a registered conservative, so sorry. My question is, did they not create this insurgency year in that sense? But yet they don't see that they have played a part in this.
Look, Washington is out of touch. The most frequent thing you hear as you travel this country is we elect people, they go to Washington, they stop listening to us. They're not listening. They're not doing what we say. You hear this from Republicans, from Democrats, from independents, from libertarians. You know, Sean, almost every day at events across this country, I have people come up to me who say, I'm a Democrat. I voted for Barack Obama. And I'm with you now. What we're saying doesn't make any sense, and I want someone who will tell the truth and will stand up for the Constitution.
All right, stay right there. We're going to come back. We have much more with Senator Ted Cruz. Breaking news tonight, a super PAC, or actually a couple of them that support Ted Cruz, it's actually called Keep the Promise, has put out a challenge that if Donald Trump will debate Ted Cruz one-on-one between now and Sunday, $1.5 million will be given to a military charity or charities. And we continue with Senator Ted Cruz. All right. What drives you? I mean, and this may sound like a crazy question. I know what bothers me the most. I feel like America's in decline. I love this country. It's been so good to me. 95 million Americans out of work, 50 million in poverty, 46 in food stamps, and then you got median income down. And then I got Iranian mullahs that are going to have a nuclear weapon. What motivates you to do this every day and 5-8 stops a day?
Look, I've had two passions almost my entire life. The first is the Constitution. I mean, going back from when I was in high school and studied and memorized the Constitution in short mnemonic.
You and Mark Levin are the only two that I know that have done that, but go ahead.
Well, you know, and Mark would tell you, Sean, the Constitution matters. You got to protect the Constitution.
And
it's almost as good as your...
Somebody else will say, I'll say it. All right, we're competing Mark Levin's here. But you're right. But now I have a passion for it.
Yes, it is, and it has been a passion my whole life. And then the second passion comes from my family story. You know my dad.
Yeah.
You know, my dad, as a teenager, was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. And when he came to America, he came here with nothing. He was 18. He had $100 in his underwear. And he washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. And when you're growing up in Texas, as I was, and you're hearing stories of your father being beaten, have his nose broken, having his teeth shattered out of his mouth, and he talks about, I remember that 1980 election between Reagan and Jimmy Carter. I was 9 years old in that election. And I remember standing by that TV and cheering for Ronald Reagan as a 9-year-old.
I was 18. First time I pulled the lever. Yeah.
And that difference, you know, when your dad has seen freedom taken away, there's an urgency to defending freedom. And when you asked me at 3, 4, 5 years old what I wanted to do, I would have said, I want to fight for freedom. Because my dad would say when I was a little kid, if we don't have principled men and women in office, that's the only way we protect ourselves from tyranny.
Hillary said about one of the candidates, I don't know who, but I think she was referring to all candidates, is they don't think America's great. I think America's great, but America's in decline. Look, and the third Obama term is not going to help it.
I believe in America with all of my heart. The principles that built America, the free market principles, the constitutional liberties, the Judeo-Christian values. But for 7 years, we have galloped away from it. We've seen a federal government bankrupting our kids and grandkids. You know, my daughters, Caroline and Catherine. Caroline is 7. In her life, the national debt's gone from $10 trillion to over $18 trillion.
Crazy.
I mean, I think about what kind of world am I giving my daughters? And, you know, when you're on the campaign trail, we're going 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. And yet I jump out of bed every day because the country's in crisis. And I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to fight to save it. And I am inspired. When you see the grassroots movement across Iowa and across the country, millions of courageous conservatives rising up to save this country, it inspires me.
Donald Trump says he's the most electable. Actually, the polls show you and Rubio do a little better in the matchup. I don't trust these polls. They're still early. Walk me through a general election against either Hillary, Bernie, Biden.
Sure.
You know, Elizabeth Warren, whoever it ends up being, right?
The polls show Trump loses to Hillary, and I beat Hillary. That's part of the reason why you've got so many Democrats echoing Donald's attack on me, is they don't want to face me in the general election. How do we win? Number one, we win by standing for truth, by speaking the truth with a smile. I think 2016 is like 1980. We win by painting in bold colors, not pale pastels.
Has the country changed that much in 30-some-odd years?
You know, it has changed a lot less than people think. A lot of the mainstream media wants us to think it changes, but we win by bringing back to the polls the millions of evangelical Christians who stayed home. 54 million evangelical Christians did not vote in 2012.
What do you worry about an electoral map where if you're a Republican presidential candidate, you're told you got to run the table. You got to win Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, then New Mexico, Colorado, and pick off Iowa, New Hampshire?
Well, look, Colorado, I've got a 10-point lead against Hillary Clinton right now. And the other key to changing the map...
You're not even for legalizing marijuana.
I am
But you're
not.
for the states.
Yes, I am for... The Constitution answers a lot of questions. But the other key to winning is changing the electoral map. You got to bring out evangelicals, but you got to bring out Reagan Democrats, working class, blue-collar Catholics across the Midwest up into New England.
Can you win Pennsylvania?
Absolutely, we can win Pennsylvania, we can win Ohio, we can win Wisconsin, we can win Michigan, we can win New Hampshire. But you can't do it if you support amnesty. You can't if you're not, because if you look at those Reagan Democrats, they're steel workers, they're auto workers, they're truck drivers and mechanics. They're getting hammered by the Obama-Clinton economy and the establishment Republicans that want amnesty. Whose jobs do you think they're taking?
Low-skilled labor, let's say in that case. You have more people competing, driving down wages and opportunities.
Yes.
It's really crazy. You'd build the wall. How fast would you get it up?
We will build the wall. We will triple the Border Patrol. We will increase fourfold the fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft. On day one, I will revoke every one of Obama's illegal executive orders, including his amnesty, and we will solve illegal immigration. There's a reason Steve King is supporting me, because he knows that I stood and fought when the battle was being waged.
Will Hillary be the candidate for the Democrats?
I would not claim to be an expert on Democratic primary voters. I will tell you this, I can't wait to stand on a debate stage with Hillary Clinton. And if Donald is so afraid of Megyn Kelly, how on earth is he going to stand up to Hillary, particularly given that he's contributed to Hillary? He gave $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation.
I would be willing to moderate a debate and take questions from the crowd. I would go there with Mark. I'll go there with Rush, anyone that wants to do it. So
I think it'd be fabulous.
So $1.5 million this PAC is saying that
so I understand that.
Yeah.
And the most important thing for the people in Iowa to know is Monday night, it's all about turnout. Come out and caucus. Bring your friends. If conservatives stand together, we're going to win.
All right, Senator. Thanks for your time. Good to see you.
Sean.
Thank you.